Hello and welcome! When someone mentions Star Wars Battlefront, what comes to your mind? To some, it's the EA game, which is slowly improving since its poorly received launch. To others, it's a classic game that has survived the test of time. And there are a few that sees it as a very impressive PSP game. But there's a very small amount of gamers who would raise an eyebrow at all these games and ask why the game isn't top-down and where's the spy class. And that's because there is one Battlefront game that isn't like the others. And that game is Star Wars Battlefront Elite Squadron for the Nintendo DS. Before we begin, a quick message from us at 16-Bit. If you don't know what to do with your Game Boy, Game Boy Color, or Game Boy Advance games when you're done playing with them, why not check out our Game Boy display shelves? They're designed and 3D printed by us to hold your games comfortably and display them beautifully. If you're interested, why not check out the description to figure out where to get them today. The Star Wars Battlefront Elite Squadron that I had as a kid is an insane game. Built from the remains of the unfinished Star Wars Battlefront 3, Elite Squadron had very ambitious plans, but if you've already seen my review of the PSP game, you'll already know that Elite Squadron just turned out okay, with the biggest issue being its lackluster story mode, and I honestly loved every moment of it. But as for the DS version of the game, I knew of its existence since I had the Nintendo Power, which had a small article about it. And from that article, I knew it would be a little different from the PSP game. From what I read in the Nintendo Power article, this wasn't really a game I'd be interested in. It was a top-down shooter rather than a third person, and Nintendo Power said it would be scaled back, and it didn't really mention how vehicles would be used, my honestly favorite part of the Star Wars Battlefront games. But Nintendo Power said I shouldn't be worried about it since N-Space would be making it. And they're partially right. N-Space has a history of not just making licensed games, but also porting console titles to the DS. But unlike their ports of Call of Duty for the DS, N-Space took a different approach with Elite Squadron. In order to cram in as much of the 960 megabyte Elite Squadron PSP game into the 64 megabyte DS cart, N-Space scrapped a lot of Elite Squadron's main gameplay, goals, and focused on what they thought the core of the game was. And from the documentations, it would appear to be the story. Everything revolved around the story, and as such, the game was split into multiple sections which were linked together with minimal loading. There are 5 unique gameplay modes, from top-down shooting levels, to space combats, to speeder levels, to combat arenas, and the elusive turret level. Over the course of the game, you'll be playing through these modes and their variations, and overall, most of these game modes are quite fun and enjoyable, and the 2 modes which are not are fortunately very infrequent. What makes these game modes fun is just how overpowered you just feel going through it all. No matter which one of the 4 classes you choose, you always feel you'll have the right tool for the job and you can storm through blasting everything in sight throughout the game. And that feeling of being overpowered is really reinforced in the narrative. In the game, you're supposed to be a clone of a Jedi, but in the PSP version, you never feel that way, even when you get a lightsaber. But on the DS game, you feel powerful from the start to the end. Compared to the other troopers, you just waltz your way through every battle. And the only time you actually feel like you're being challenged is when you're fighting other Jedi or equivalents in the combat arenas. What helps is also the greater emphasis on the story mode. More happens here, and there's more story going around. I feel as I was able to get a better understanding of these characters in the DS game. You get more time with them. A great example of this in action is the Dantooine mission. On the PSP game, X2 just left the Empire and joined a rebel cell, but on the DS game, X2 objects to the Empire's orders and goes AWOL. You flee the Empire and land on Dantooine to warn the rebels of the incoming attack and help them fight to escape, or at least try. And when you fail, you feel X2's burn as he continues through the game. And Space did a much better job with the campaign than Rebellion ever could on the PSP. But unfortunately, the campaign is the only real upside. Unlike the PSP, where you have instant action and galactic conquest to give the player a lot more to do in the game once it's over, the DS game just waters down the instant action. There really isn't a lot to do here that you haven't already done in the campaign, and what's worse is that there's only 4 players total, bots or humans, versus the once upon a time 16-player multiplayer matches that you could have done on the PSP, and I think you can still do over ad hoc. And unlike the campaign, you're no longer the team-carrying juggernaut that you were. Now you're just another grunt who dies easily. Add to all that the weak level selection, boring hero mode, there isn't really much to come back to with Elite Squadron. So, as a Star Wars Battlefront game, Elite Squadron isn't very good. If I was to give this game to my younger self, I feel he'd probably play this game once, but never touch it again. But looking at the Elite Squadron now, I don't really see it as a bad Battlefront game, but rather a good Star Wars game. At no point during my entire playthrough of Elite Squadron did I ever think I wasn't playing anything other than a Star Wars game. And as a DS game, I feel it looks pretty good and it plays extremely well. And from what Star Wars game I've actually played over the years on the DS, it's most certainly one of the best Star Wars games on the platform. So if you have a DS and if you're looking for a great Star Wars story from before the Disney buyout, I can absolutely recommend this game. But if you're looking for a good portable Battlefront, stick with Elite Squadron for the PSP. But anyways, thank you ever so much for watching. Hope you have yourself a fantastic day. And as always, take care.